The leader of the Greens is standing down from the job, although she's going to stay on as an MP. Caroline Lucas says she's doing it so that other members of her party can raise their profiles. But can the smaller parties ever get over the problem that sometimes their leaders are bigger than they are? Adam's been investigating.
Let's call it the Gulliver dilemma. What do you do if you're a big political figure, but your party is, well, a bit small? That question's being posed after the Greens-only MP Caroline Lucas announced that she's standing down as the party's leader so that others can share the limelight.
I think the problem that a lot of small parties have is that their leader becomes huge in political terms and then there's a vacuum below them. So the danger for the Greens would be that they became all about Caroline Lucas and not about the rest of the party. So I think it's an opportunity for someone else to step forward.
Sadly for UKIP, when their leader Nigel Farage decided to stand down, the person who stepped forward was Lord Pearson.
Have you read your manifesto? Of course. Really?
Yeah.
You don't seem very familiar with it.
Well, I haven't remembered it all in detail. I didn't come on to talk about this sort of...
You didn't come on to talk about your manifesto?
I did, but not in the detail of whether I've talked to some policeman in some car park.
Which is why Mr Farage returned pretty soon afterwards. Although sometimes it's helpful having a boss who's famous.
Used to watch you on the telly.
You can't now, right?
Robert Kilroy Silk launched Veritas in 2005, and then he left. Can you name their current leader? And the referendum party of the late 90s may be a distant memory, but the high profile of their founder, Sir James Goldsmith, helped them secure around 800,000 votes at a general election. Celebrity can sometimes create confusion, though. Many think George Galloway is the leader of respect. He's not. He's just a humble MP. It's quite easy to make fun of these people who tower over their party, but underestimate them at your peril.
They help set the agenda for the larger parties. So whereas no one would pretend that UKIP are going to be a major electoral force, the influence of UKIP is felt more in terms of how the other parties react to them. Ditto with the Greens. They've certainly managed to ensure that their agenda, albeit from their perspective watered down, is now pretty much a permanent part of all the three main parties.
But maybe all this talk about leadership distracts from the fact that all parties, no matter what size they are, need enough little people to do all the difficult work. Things like knocking on doors. Real-sized doors, that is.
The UKIP leader, Nigel Farage, is still with us. I mean, do you accept smaller parties benefit, don't they, from having a larger-than-life vocal leader like yourself?
Well, normally, smaller parties are founded by somebody. Normally, smaller parties are drawn from the top and support comes up towards the leader. And you see this right across Europe. In this country, I would argue that UKIP is very different to that. UKIP is, and the Greens are similar actually, because we're both grassroots movements where the support for the party has bubbled up from the bottom. There's never been a completely dominant figure in UKIP. Well, there was briefly with that suntan fellow, which didn't work out very well.
I think I would beg to differ. You are that the dominant figure. I mean, you know, we demonstrated it there when Lord Pearson took over for a brief time. Didn't know the manifesto. I'm sure that wouldn't have happened to you. And you know, you came back and took the job.
Listen,
and
if I was to fall under a bus or
yes,
or have a plane crash, who knows with me?
Don't mention the plane crash.
I mean, if I was to disappear tomorrow, UKIP wouldn't disappear. That's the point I'm making.
But would it be as successful? I mean,
you
are UKIP. For many people, I'm not saying you are, but for many people, you are the party.
We're a grassroots organisation. We've got 300 branches up and down the country. Yes, at the moment, I might be the dominant figure in it, but it's about far more than me.
But if you were to step aside for whatever reason, you know, where are the next generation of UKIP leaders?
I think there are one or two people that could do the job now, actually. People who've been elected to the European Parliament and have gained some political experience. It wouldn't be easy, but it never is. Look, nobody ever, you know, I didn't come into this as a known celebrity. I came into this as a complete nobody. I've had to work at it.
Right, well, let's just ask our gods. I'm not doing a test on you, but who could take over who's in UKIP now, Anne McElvoy? Can you think of somebody in UKIP?
I would struggle with that precisely because, as you say, it is quite a grassroots party, and you also have some very good women who are associated with other things, who do they're more known for campaigning on those issues, and they are UKIP, but they're not really associated in the public mind with it. And I think you also have some very powerful figures who like to stay a bit behind the scenes. I'm thinking of people like Stuart Wheeler. Yeah. So what you have is you've got funders, great, you've got grassroots, as you said yourself, but what tends to happen is that someone emerges who can catch the public imagination, as you have, and then it's very difficult when you go. And I think Caroline Lucas, what is certainly true about the Greens, no matter what the real reason for her going, it will not be simply easy to say, well, I'm going to move out of the way. Yes. I create this oxygen and someone steps into it. That's not the way small parties work.
What's going to happen then to the Greens? What effect will it have, do you think, of Caroline Lucas stepping down as leader?
I think with smaller parties, although the leader, the personality of the leader is extremely important, and you're one of the great media performers, and that's
God, we're being so nice to you.
We are. Forget about him. Forget about him.
Come on, Joe.
Where's the but as well? But the issue for the smaller parties is actually the issue they're identified with and how salient it is. So it was an interesting question just asked of Nigel. If he gets this referendum, which he's always wanted,
exactly,
and then Britain votes to stay in the European Union,
you'll have to return.
What role then, not just for Nigel, but for UKIP? Similarly for the Greens, when Caroline Lucas got that seat in Brighton, the environment was one of the big issues, pre the recession and so on. Now, whether it remains as salient in the economic doldrums, I think is a bigger issue when parties are associated with one particular policy area. So I think their fate is much more dependent on the policy area that they're associated with.
I think that may have been true, and certainly 3 or 4 years ago, if you looked at UKIP and talked about UKIP, it was just the European question. But I think over the last few years, we really have broadened, and people are voting for us in local elections.
I mean, your electoral success has not been great.
Well, actually, if you look at our progress in the English local elections, just 2 weeks ago, just 2 weeks ago, people are going out and voting for us for a lot more reasons than just the European question.
But, well, except the European question now is so salient and at the top of the agenda, isn't it? I mean, just to broaden it out, you mentioned the Greens, but I mean, let's look at some of the nationalist, parties. I mean, look at Alex Salmond and the SNP. Now, of course, it's not a small party in that sense, but it does. I mean, does that apply in the same way?
What if they have the referendum in Scotland and there is a vote to keep the union? I think...
actually, I don't think I agree. No, I don't agree with that. For a start, I don't think Alex Salmond will go up for a question if he thinks that will be the outcome. What we'll do is shade it towards an endless progression towards Devo Max and these awful
Yes, so he'll have another 10 years.
So we'll have another 10 years of deciding how far Scotland... And certainly he will keep pushing for more Scottish powers. And it does have a strong base in the electorate. So, I mean, he could easily mistime it. He could get, in inverted commas, the wrong result. I'd be very surprised if we were back here and there wasn't a sort of SNP of some sort to be dealing with.
All right,
perhaps, but in decline, maybe.